WTVD, Channel 11, Durham, Raleigh, Fayetteville.
My favorite sheriff. All the sheriffs on here.
3 members of the WTVD-11 news team are killed in an early morning helicopter crash. Tony Debo, the only one to survive. Good evening, everyone. I'm Larry Stogner. In an incredibly sad day here at WTVD-11, we have all lost friends, people we admired, people we loved. Our helicopter pilot, one of our photographers, and an engineer are all dead, killed in the crash of Chopper 11. It happened early this morning as they were heading home from the coast covering a high school football game. WTVD's Keith Whitney begins our coverage.
The news hit home, and it hurt. The chopper that fell to earth in a Wake County wheat field was our own. And the victims were not strangers, they were our friends, co-workers too young for epitaphs. Yellow sheets could cover the bodies, but not the horror that took the lives of WTVD photographer Bart Smith, pilot Jim Lane, and engineer Rick Sherrill. Only Tony Debo cheated death and made it out alive.
At first, it sounded like a regular plane, but just you heard a quick silent, then a boom, like the engine died on it.
The engine actually sounded like it died before it hit the ground?
Yeah, that's what it sounded. Of RPMs is what it sounded like.
The helicopter, a French-made Aerostar, sat like a broken insect in the early morning frost. Witnesses say it simply appeared to fall from the sky after what may have been a complete power failure.
It just sounded like it just shut off and died. It was a terrible sound.
One motorist may have seen the helicopter's early descent, thinking it was a shooting star.
I've seen shooting stars in the past, and they usually have a little trail or something behind them. But this one was like a light bulb just moving across the sky. It was a gliding type motion. It was not coming right straight vertical down. It was at an angle.
A pilot on the ground told FAA officials that he heard the chopper stall, then try to auto-rotate, a last-ditch survival technique that pilots use to jumpstart the that drives the blades.
We'll basically go through the helicopter and through the circumstances of the accident piece by piece until we get everything that we possibly can.
The crew was coming back from a sports shoot in Wilmington. Lane liked to cruise at 1,500 feet for Friday night, and the chopper may have dropped from that height, the equivalent of a skyscraper 150 stories tall. The medical examiner says the force of the impact killed the 3 victims instantly, but ironically may have saved Tony Debo's life after his seat was literally pushed free from the body of his friend, Bart Smith. Now somehow, in all the darkness and confusion, Tony Debo found a path that led him straight to Mary Jones' backyard. At first, Jones thought he was trying to break in. Debo's face was covered with blood, and she had no way to recognize him. She called 911.
And I told him, I said, it's a man at my door, and he's bleeding, he's banging. I said, he's going to break in. I said, you need to come in, help him.
Lawmen came, and Jones remembered Debo's face from TV.
I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were, not to let you in by my... I understand, he said, I understand. And he said, I'm all right. He said, no, you saved my life.
Jim Lane was a Vietnam combat chopper pilot. Some FAA investigators on the scene knew him personally. And in the words of one, it appeared that he tried to do everything he could. There just wasn't anything he could do. In Wake County, Keith Whitney, WTVD 11 News.
Our viewers were always delighted by Chopper 11 and its pilot, Jim Lane. But to us, it was a finely tuned machine cared for and maintained by one of the best. That's what makes this morning's crash such a mystery. WTVD's Jennifer Julian has more.
Chopper 11 was a news-gathering tool for us at WTVD, just like a van or a camera. Like other equipment, the A-Star helicopter was on a maintenance schedule. Its latest checkup just yesterday.
He was just finishing up with some maintenance, and he contacted me to tell me that he was very happy with the results. He's feeling pretty good about the way the aircraft was working, and he was looking forward to doing his flight on Friday.
He was our chopper pilot, Jim Lane. Just last week, Lane reported troubles with his single-engine A-Star. He contacted the owner of the chopper, Fleet Helicopter Services in Pennsylvania, and Raleigh Flight Services.
Last weekend, he had experienced a problem with the helicopter and loss of power, and they had suggested take some components off the engine to send into a test and evaluation factory.
On Friday, Raleigh Flight Services installed the engine's components.
The helicopter was flown sometime on Friday with mechanics that had worked on the helicopter, and at that point, everything was all right on the helicopter.
Engineers at Raleigh Flight Service can only speculate about what happened Friday night. They do believe that the chopper lost power and the pilot, Jim Lane, tried an auto-rotate, a method of landing the craft without the engine running. Trip Volt says Lane did his best trying to land the craft, but Volt says the odds were against Lane at night.
At night, I would say it would be difficult because in a helicopter, you can only see where you're hitting, which is directly in front or below the aircraft.
Late this afternoon, fleet mechanics took the A-Star's flight maintenance record to FAA investigators on the scene. They hope to get more clues through the chopper's maintenance history. Jennifer Julian, WE11 News.
The only real eyewitness to the crash was the survivor, Tony Debo. He has a fractured ankle, severe cuts and bruises, but he will make it. He is spending the night in the hospital and is expected to go home tomorrow. His bruises may heal, but his other story. I spoke with him this afternoon about what happened.
Well, it was about 11:45, midnight. You know, we were just cruising along fine, and all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, with no warning, no nothing, everything just went black. The whole inside of the cockpit, all the digits. It was like somebody had just flipped a light switch off. And I'd never seen Jim have this look before. Jim had this look like, this is serious trouble. All I could say was, oh my God. Bart and Rick didn't say a word. And, you know, Jim was looking. That's why I swear he knew everything down. I swear he saw a field down there, and I don't know how. And I remember hitting ground, and that's it. When I came to, the first thing I did was look around. I saw the helicopter, and that was just a mess. And then I thought to myself, I gotta do something. There was no way anybody could live what I looked at. Just no way. And I looked through the trees, and luckily the leaves were off the trees because of winter. And far, far away in the distance, I saw a little white light, just a little white light. And I used that for like my guiding star, and I figured there's a white light, there's a house, or there's some sort of civilian life. And I followed it. I remember like going with no shoe, few clothes. I could barely walk. But I wasn't going to stop. It's just that I lost 3 good friends. I'd been with Jim and Bart for 5 years shooting high school football. It was the best video Bart had shot. The whole time we were giving one another high fives because we got everything. He shot everything. And it was another season successfully done. 5 seconds, it was all gone. And I can't, you know, it's just, I can't understand why I'm here. Why am I alive? It's a question I keep asking myself. I guess it's an answer I'll never know.
In a strange bit of irony, Tony told me today when he was a kid he had a dream of being in a plane crash, and he always walked away. Flying has become a tool of the trade for broadcast journalists. Tony didn't like it much, but he and his colleagues loved what they were doing. WTVD's Dave Bolick reports.
They flew through the skies for years, a trio of laughing storytellers dipping into high school football stadiums all over the state to do their reports. Sports reporter Tony Debo, photographer Bart Smith, pilot Jim Lane. It was their special thing. And last night, engineer Rick Sherrill hitchhiked a little earlier from Wilmington. It was the last Friday night football of the year. It ended in a heart-grinding crash in a Wake County field. The yellow blankets that we report on so often, this time marked Jim, Bart, and Rick.
It will take someone smarter than I to tell us what happened to this helicopter, why it fell out of the sky. But we do know what happened to three friends, and our heart hurts. WTVD's Ed Crump and Bart Smith were best friends.
He's just the kind of person that I think I had put us, and I've told him so on occasion. That
Bart lived every day like a third grader on the first day of summer vacation.
the guy was larger than life. I mean, at 6'6", he was big anyway, but he was larger than life. And he was like this gentle giant. He was such a child at heart that he always made me feel good.
Photographer Dave Wertheimer and engineer Rick Sherrill were close.
He taught me a lot about life and how to just be happy and to not let things get you down when things are going wrong. Keep pushing ahead. Don't stop for the problems. Just keep going.
Rick was just about all life of the party, like the time he came to a Halloween party dressed like a baby, or he and Bart did some fencing with some microphones. And even though he came from up north around the Great Lakes, Jim Lane, a good old boy. I would thoughtfully remind Jim Lane that he was considerably older than I am. It was 10 days. He would thoughtfully say, "Attaboy, Curly." He loved life. He did not want to give it up right now. He was fun. He was kind. None of us had any problems flying with Jim, especially now. Last time I flew with him, he said, "I'm not dying today. I've got to get married." All three were engaged. Jim and Diane were to be married in 3 weeks. Rick in April. Bart had spent the week shopping for an engagement ring for Karen. We will remember their sharp minds, their big hearts, and their good natures. They were very, very good at what they did. That made them very, very important to your understanding of our news stories. Away from home, and there was fear he would drown in Falls Lake. It was Chopper Jim who flew the search.
Okay, I have Eric in my arms at this time.
Don Ross' 1988 story was a snapshot of Jim with a bunch of kids.
Do you enjoy flying?
I enjoy flying. I love what I do.
Wherever you saw Ed Crump, Bart Smith was most likely behind the camera. Bart was one of the first photographers on the scene of an Amtrak wreck in South Carolina. When I was sent to cover Hurricane Bob this past summer, you wouldn't have known about it if Rick Sherrill had not done his job. He was one of the operators of our satellite truck. Whether it was a basketball game a continent away or a live broadcast from around the corner, Rick Sherrill's skill made sure you saw the news at your home. When they call the newsroom roll on Monday, WTVD will be short 3 souls. Bart Smith.
You know, I really don't know how I'm going to be able to go back to work without him. It's going to be very, very difficult.
Rick Sherrill.
You're a friend that will always be there.
Jim Lane. When everything is said and done, there are only a few people that you really say, "I'm glad this person touched my life, and I'm glad Jim Lane was my friend." They were more than friends, colleagues. They were brothers and fiancés. We loved them. They loved us back. Dave Bullock, WTVD 11 News, Raleigh.